There we go. Um, so thanks for coming. I know there are a lot of webinar offerings out there these days, and we really do appreciate your support of PGMS. And I think we've got a great session coming up here with Ian, and I know you'll get a few nuggets that you're going to be able to use in your own job. So let's see, I just have a couple quick announcements. We encourage you to put any questions you might have in the chat box as we're going along. I think Roger's already done that. And anyway, we'll try to address those as we're going along. So Ian, I might interrupt you every now and then with questions, because I like to keep up with those, and I know you want to too. If you're interested in claiming any credit for the School of Grounds Management, we're going to be posting a link in the chat box at the end of the session. And actually, this will be a link to a survey. So we encourage everyone to take the survey, but if you're in the School of Grounds Management credit system, then you'll have the opportunity to put your name in for that. ISA credits, they are also available, and you can do that by self-reporting through your ISA account on the ISA website. Similar, if you are a CGT or CGM, just go to the PGMS website. And if you want to claim your CEUs for this, you can do that through your member portal. A big thank you today to Coates Landscape Supply. They are sponsoring today's webinar, and they are providing $200 Amazon gift certificates. So we're going to randomly draw those from all the attendees that are here today, and we'll announce the winners at the end. I think we're going to have a live drawing too, so stay tuned for that one. Let's see. So again, thank you to Coates. We do appreciate their support, and I've got a really brief video that I'm going to share with you from Coates. Give me a second here.
The Walker Model T is one of our most powerful and versatile machines. Have you ever wished for one commercial mower that could handle virtually any job you could imagine? So have we, and we call it the Walker Model T. The Walker Model T will quickly become the go-to mower in your fleet. Schedule a no-obligation demonstration today to try a T23, T25i, or T30i on your lawn.
All right, so today's presenter is Ian Scott. And, hang on a second.
You got me there?
Okay, let's try this again. Ian Scott, welcome aboard.
Thanks.
All right. I've got a brief introduction here, Ian,
Sure.
for you, and then you can take her away. Ian Scott is an area manager and urban forestry specialist with Davey Resource Group. He has served clients throughout the U.S., the Western U.S. and Canada since 1998. Based out of Shoreline, Washington, he works with property managers to develop urban forest management solutions, deliver urban tree inventories, and provide tree assessments. Ian has a Bachelor of Science degree in forestry and environmental management from the University of New Brunswick in Canada. He is a board certified master arborist with tree risk assessment qualifications by the International Society of Arboriculture. He is also a registered consulting arborist with the American Society of Consulting Arborists. He is a 2009 graduate of the Municipal Forestry Institute and past president of the Wallingford Toastmasters Club. I think that's in Seattle, right, Ian?
Yeah, Wallingford Club 252.
Yeah. All right, so Let's see, before we start, Ian, I think we're going to do one poll question, right?
Sure. Yeah, okay, exactly.
And we do have several polls that are going to pop up every now and then. Please participate, and they're pretty easy questions.
Right.
Okay, so what state are you attending from? And there's several choices and regional choices.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. Western, Eastern US. Okay.
Good representation from the East Coast.
All right. I'll take that.
Okay, looks like we're just about there.
Yeah, okay.
All right, I'm going to end it.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'll take it away from here. Getting a sense of where everybody's calling in from is a little helpful. You know, I work out of Washington State, so a lot of the ideas that I'm going to be exploring, especially around governments and regulations. You know, as we get into that part of the program here, that'll you know, be something I'll try to adjust to. Here. So to get started, well, you know, thank you, Mike, and thank you to the PGMS for the introduction, the opportunity to speak with all of you today. You know, Mike has said a little bit about me, but, you know, my background on this it really informs my perspective on the topic. I started my tree career in getting a degree in forestry and environmental management from the University of New Brunswick in Eastern Canada. You might hear an accent as I go on today.
Share 100%.
Hello, Jared. Okay. But so I've come a long way from, you know, my initial forestry learnings. But the fundamental idea that I still apply every day is about how the forest has value. And it's my job as a forester to help identify and extract that value. Working for Davey has had me working in California, looking at trees next to the power line right-of-ways. Here, in that instance, the value was reliable electricity. I got my ISA certified arborist credential over time and eventually the utility specialist designation. Then I shifted my career and my work opportunities into helping cities with tree inventories. And this is where the tree value was not in relation to timber or electricity. It was the relationship to the built environment. I chased down the municipal specialist's credentials at that time and eventually picked up BCMA and ASCA credentials. Those are the highest level certifications from ISA and ASCA. And what they tell you here today is that I have a lot of knowledge according to BCMA about trees, and I know how to write and share my knowledge thanks to that ASCA credential. At least that's my interpretation of the two. So what are we doing today? Well, today's agenda, it's really a story of 5 whys. The 5 whys approach to looking at things is credited to Toyota manufacturing of automobiles. But I really think it's a great method to understand the root cause of problems. And in our case, for managing trees, it helps really guide goal setting and decision making. So the first why are we here? Well, we're here to learn about strategies to control tree care costs. And we do that with management plans. But why would we use a management plan? To take a planned approach to managing your tree inventory. Why would you inventory trees? Well, to do that, to be aligned with your grounds management policies and values. And often these are connect to local regulations at the federal, state, local, federal, state level. Why are trees regulated at all? Well, because trees have value to the communities where they grow in terms of ecosystem services and benefits, and these benefits can be optimized. So the theme of this presentation is to help you think about proactive versus reactive management. We'll use this 5 whys approach to explore this theme and understand solutions. And the problem we have here is that a managed landscape property, tree care has a cost, and we want to understand that cost from the ground up so we can control those costs from the canopy on down. So why do we care about trees? Well, it's increasingly accepted and understood that trees provide numerous values. They moderate temperatures through shading. They're a natural wonder, and that wonder of nature tends to reduce stress and improve our health and well-being. Instead of the doctor, say, going to a doctor and them prescribing you a pill, maybe they're prescribing taking walks in nature. Take a nature bath. Spend some time in nature and feel better. Trees improve the quality of the soil. In addition, trees improve the quality of soil through a myriad of soil science processes. Studies in various cities around the US show that trees reduce violence and crime. And maybe because they reduce stress, they also help build community. People want to dwell outside with trees in their view. Trees also clean the air by exchanging carbon dioxide for oxygen. Trees tend to reduce noise pollution and provide habitat for other wildlife. And ultimately, trees are a critical component of the urban forest. And as a side here, I'd like to interject with, have you ever thought about the word forest and where it comes from? The word has its Latin origins as fori, which means outside. So when we talk about grounds management and the urban forest, we're really exploring that management of the urban outside. Trees, landscaping, greenery, all make our urban outside a high quality space for us to be. And these benefits of trees is a lofty set of value statements that are qualified by our experiences. Through scientific research and the understanding of our natural world, we know that trees provide specific measurable benefits. An acre of maple trees can moderate 20,000 gallons of rainwater each day. Noise can be reduced by measurable decibel levels as much as 5 to 10, maybe even as effective as stone walls. But if noise is not your concern, maybe it's air quality. A single tree produces 260 pounds of oxygen each year, and 2 trees may be enough to support the oxygen needs of an entire family. Most conversations about environmental sustainability involve our relationship with carbon. And as individuals, we may be the source of about 10 tons of carbon dioxide per year. 1 tree could remove 1 ton of that CO2. Now, over time, like say 50 years, a tree can produce $31,000 worth of oxygen, $62,000 in air pollution control. Maybe they recycle $37,000 in water and minimize $31,000 worth of soil erosion. So, 1 tree by itself may seem like a small contribution over a 50-year spread, but the big picture for communities where we live, work, and play is that these numbers make good sense and we can be confident that trees can pay us back. So at the turn of the century, tree research and academia was building strong models that describe and quantify all these benefits. Computer processing power was available to analyze the benefits of trees and was beginning to take shape. And the USDA Forest Service partnered with tree care leadership, including Davey Tree, the Arbor Day Foundation, the Society of Municipal Arborists, the International Society of Arboriculture, Casey Trees, and SUNY College. And as a collaboration, they started pulling together all the tree science models into one resource they called iTree. The iTree suite of tools is becoming the standard approach for analyzing and reporting on the benefits of trees. The software tools quantify carbon sequestration and storage, air quality improvements, stormwater mitigation, and energy usage. They had originally provided quantified analysis of the aesthetic benefits of trees, but that valuation has been removed temporarily from these calculations because it wasn't holding up to the rigors of peer review. When people talk about analyzing using iTree, they're typically referring to one of the tools that I've got up on the screen here: iTree Landscape, iTree Design, iTree MyTree, iTree Eco, and iTree Canopy. Each of these software tools tap into the same underlying models, but provide access to metrics that aid forest management and advocacy for trees. They help convey the financial benefits of trees and that investing in trees will pay us back. Now, we hear a lot about infrastructure spending in the news right now, and here what we're talking about for infrastructure spending is really green infrastructure spending. So I encourage you to visit the iTree website and try out their online tools. Municipal forest managers, landscape managers, and campus managers will mostly benefit from the analysis available in iTree Eco, but that requires a tree inventory, which I'm going to get to later on in the presentation. iTree Landscape and iTree Canopy are large-scale tools for showing the benefits of trees without an inventory. And the most accessible softwares I can point to right now is to check out MyTree and iTree Design. So, for example, this is a photo of Douglas fir tree in my yard. And I'm sorry, I keep looking to my right, so it just for your benefit, I've got two monitors going, so I can see what I'm presenting to you guys here as well. This tree here, it measures 45 inches in diameter. It's about 80 years old. It's a Douglas fir in my yard, and it's considered a landmark tree here in the city of Shoreline. If it were growing in any of my neighboring municipalities, it would still qualify for landmark protection. Some places this tree would have no protection whatsoever. And that's unfortunate because keeping this tree gives back $36 each year to the city for its environmental benefits. And you can see on the screen here how that number breaks down. But it doesn't account for property value increases or aesthetic and emotional benefits. And if I can pick a value that I most appreciate, it's that our home doesn't need air conditioning. This tree provides all the shade we need during the summer months to keep our home nice and cool. If you add up all the trees in the city that are like this, you can get some very consequential valuations that make a case for funding tree care. Now, looking at that same tree through iTree Design yields mostly the same results. The difference with the design feature is that you can plan and model the benefits of additional trees and include a sketch of buildings to optimize the location of the tree planting opportunities. So the green shaded graphic here that shows up, if you go into the site, you'll use the buttons to draw out the location of the building. So that would be where my home is, and that little point is my tree. And that green shaded graphic shows where planting trees can deliver the most benefits. So you can move the location around and see how much that might improve in terms of shading and other consequences around the energy benefits of the building. And I encourage you to use this tool if you want to explore maximizing the benefits of trees around buildings, or you're considering planting new trees. In particular, because this model, it's hard to see way down in the corner here, but this model lets you grow the trees. So you can say, hey, if I plant a tree here, what are the benefits going to be in 10 years' time? But as I said earlier, likely the most relevant software out of iTree for you guys is going to be iTree Eco. And our company, we did a project a few years back for Ocean View School District in Orange County, California. We've done similar projects for entire cities, but I present this example here to you because as members of the PGMS, the properties you steward might reasonably have a similar tree count. With this school district, we were able to model the benefits of 363 trees, and that they all have an annual benefit of just over $48,000. Now, when we did this project, the iTree model was still reporting the aesthetic benefits of trees. And as I mentioned to you before, we aren't really accounting for these benefits right now, as the model requires some improvements. The other facts and figures are still strong based on peer review, but and the district reported to us that they spend an average about $5,000 per year on tree care. This benefit versus investment ratio equates to $9.68 for every dollar they spend on trees. But if you take out those intangible benefits, the district is still getting $1.88 for every dollar they spend on trees. So here again is another example, trees pay us back. Now, if you're getting stuck on those intangible values, you aren't alone. There are definitely academics working on putting a price value back on it. And academia is trying to quantify the benefits of trees and their influence on livable cities and their social strengths, place attachment and meaning, the benefits of crime and public safety, stress, wellness, psychology, healing and therapy, mental health and function, which I think are kind of similar in working and learning, life cycle, gender. All of this, I pulled, this short list from Green Cities and Good Health. So that's a UW service here in Washington State, but it really is pulling together all of these intangible benefits and reports and essays and scientific research. And so if you're looking for that kind of information, I encourage you to check that out. And then as something very new, I also recommend you take a moment to learn about this nature score. This is something I like brand new to me. About a month ago, I got turned on to it. There's a company called NatureQuant, and they're using big data models to give a score for a place. You enter your ad, if you go onto their online model, you can do that on the side right now even, but don't get too distracted. You can enter your address into that model, and NatureScore will predict the protective impact that nearby nature may have on your health and longevity relative to the base of a nature deficient area. For my property, I have a good fortune of living in an area with a nature score of 70.4. This means that predicted benefits range from 56 to 78% of the maximum and health benefit markers such as longevity, high blood pressure, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and premature death. And in my case, it's mostly the trees around me that provide that score and those benefits. So, so at this point, we're gonna take a quick pause. I'm gonna take a drink of water. Mike, if you've been monitoring some questions, I wanted to encourage you to, if you have any questions about what I covered about tree benefits, let me know. Mike, if you want to launch the poll, I'd be interested in hearing what you guys have to say. And for your benefit, the picture I've got up here is a little bit of a right of way that's been cleared for light rail construction. I had the opportunity to be looking at all those Douglas fir trees for preservation, and I just thought it was an interesting, how the construction butted right up against those trees. So I'm not sure how well they're going to fare in the long run, but the trees were protecting. The trees were left to protect the stream behind them, and so they're all serving a neat purpose. What benefit of trees do you consider most valuable in the properties you manage? Yeah, see, aesthetics and intangible. I don't know, Mike, or Mary, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the results of the poll? You're the only one with a camera on who's an attendee. Just curious. Can't see the results? Oh, okay. And I guess polling is still open.
We're just about there, Ian.
Mm-hmm.
Got 2 votes left.
Yeah, okay. That's pretty good. I think I like asking that question because I do find working out of Washington State, most people resonate around the benefits of stormwater. Energy savings and air quality tend to come out of California pretty strong, and across the board, the aesthetics and intangible benefits of trees usually went out too. It's just harder to quantify and make a business case around. Right on. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Mary. Mike, any other questions out there?
Not yet.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on then. So now that we know all the ways that trees have their values, it's easier to understand why governments in some way or another will regulate their trees. I'm going to mostly speak to the laws in Washington State here, as I've warned you, but you likely have similar considerations wherever you're calling in from. At the state and federal level, there are laws that are designated to protect the environment. The earliest protections for trees tend to come out of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918. If your tree has a nest in it and the bird is protected, then the tree is protected. The Environmental Policy Acts of 1971 and the Endangered Species Act of 1973 both resulted in further protections of trees. However, it's been the GMA Act, the Growth Management Act of 1990, and I think that was just a Washington act. That's not a federal act, but it's really been a big influence on tree protection regulations in the urban forest. And this caused, the act caused cities in Washington to have to think long-term about their municipalities and include environmental impacts in their planning. In 2008, the Washington State Legislature approved the Evergreen Communities Act as a way of promoting urban forest management in municipalities around the state. And even though that act language is unfunded, recently there's a House Bill 1216, which seems to have passed and is just waiting for governor's signature, and it's going to direct about $2.7 million in spending towards urban forestry. So if you manage a nonprofit property, a municipal property, or an academic institution, these funds might be accessible to you for tree care. However, if you need to have knowledge, in order to get access to this kind of funding, you do need to have some knowledge about your trees and your place in context with the rest of the urban forest, to really pursue it. So, and to wrap up this slide with the image that I shared, I'm hearing from a lot that most of the spending of grant money, and this I think is nationwide, that they're really considering environmental equity at this point. Environmental equity and social justice are tremendously important issues these days. And in Washington, our DNR is using, the DNR Department of Natural Resources is using targeted improvements to the community using the Washington Environmental Health Disparities Map as an indicator of where resources and targeted improvements to communities should go. So if you're seizing an opportunity to pursue a grant, think about the value of trees in terms of environmental equity. It's a good connection for winning a grant. And whichever state you are in, look to connect with your state urban forestry coordinator. Every state has one, and they can be an excellent resource for keeping you aware of opportunities and assistance.
Hey, Ian,
Yeah.
we did actually have a question. I'm a little bit late on the draw here from Roger.
Okay.
He wanted to know, does it predict the replacement value? And if so, how is it determined?
The replacement value of the tree? No, that's it predicts or models the benefits of the trees as they're currently providing. You can grow it into the future, but that replacement cost, I think you're getting in towards tree appraisal, and I'll actually be able to touch on that just a little further on into the program here. Yeah, because we're going to drill down. We're really taking this from a high level right down to the trees that you guys might individually manage. So at the local level, local to the Puget Sound here, we did a project with the Nature Conservancy that collated all the urban tree canopy assessment work done within Snohomish, King, and Pierce County. This data, has been integrated into iTree Landscape to improve the usefulness of that model. And you can visit the link here that I've shared to get an easy visualization of the results. If you live in an area that has done canopy assessment work, you may want to learn more about the canopy cover on the properties you manage and its relationship to the overall landscape. On this slide, I'm showing you a little more detail about Kent, Washington. The colors in the middle image represent different types of tree canopy. The purple and orange show the margins or edge canopy and of fully forested lands. And cities are increasingly considering the management of forest fragmentation as a way to improve the quality of wildlife habitat and natural corridors through the city in a similar way to transit like roads and highways. Looking at the third image on the right is a closer detail of a cemetery in Kent. It's right on the edge of the municipality. It's got forest on all three sides. And if the city could work with this property to get more trees, increase canopy, or at least protect what is there, they'll be headed in the right direction to improving the connectivity between two major forested corridors. So you can see right here, the sweeping around. If you were the grounds manager at the cemetery, you may find yourself with opportunities to get assistance from state grants to care for trees or free trees from the city to enhance your landscaping. The takeaway message here is that trees and properties you manage are part of a bigger ecosystem, and understanding that relationship will help you make the case to get funding for trees and doing the right things for the whole community around you. So where does the rubber meet the road when it comes to your trees and regulations? I like to ask, where do the roots connect to the trunk? Where your tree is located could have an impact on your options for managing that area. This slide is an example in Renton, Washington, of a golf course tree inventory. All those green dots represent trees on the property. To manage these trees in alignment with municipal codes is somewhat dependent on where the tree is growing. These trees are definitely regulated under county development codes and municipal development codes, and usually one builds off of the other. But in areas I consider actively landscaped, municipal tree ordinance may limit what you can remove. If your tree is on a steep slope, a natural area, a wetland, or other special location, these could be protected as environmentally critical areas, native growth protection areas. In all likelihood, if you are being a good environmental stewards, you will need to seek permission for tree removals and vegetation management activity. And this can cost you both time and money. So this brings us back to the kinds of reporting that you may need to provide to your local officials to accomplish your objectives. When you explore city codes for permits, you typically find yourself in the direction of needing an arborist report. And if you're an ISA certified arborist, you're likely qualified for this task, but the skills you're going to tap will challenge you more in writing about the trees than running a chainsaw or pruning skills. Arborists typically report in these 4 categories I've presented here. Tree appraisals, which is a little different from the iTree benefits we discussed earlier, and I think that's where you get into that replacement valuation. This most often follows the method provided by the Council of Tree and Landscape Appraisal, CTLA. There's a revised 10th edition with an updated approach that I think is, as much as it's getting criticized, brings a lot of value, allows you to integrate a lot of the environmental benefits of trees into the valuation. Risk assessments, they're an increasingly common requirement for permits where large trees are concerned. I guess even small trees, but permitting agencies want you to show that a tree is a high risk of failure and injury before approving a removal. Have you got dead trees on your property? Well, increasingly you may ask to keep the tree standing dead for wildlife benefits, but you still need to trim back that tree substantially to keep it safe. In all cases, good environmental managers are always looking for ways to mitigate the risk of tree failure by considering other options besides tree removal. Risk assessment methodology helps with that. Formal tree risk assessments and documented inventories like this campus illustration, there are the most comprehensive strategy for proactively managing your trees. In addition to being able to proactively manage your trees, these can support you in permitting and budgeting for trees. And I'll speak a little bit more about that in just a moment here. In the last one, tree protection plans. This is a kind of reporting that is typically associated with managing changes to landscaping from construction. A tree protection plan should be something you draft whenever there are construction impacts within the root zones of trees you manage. In some jurisdictions, this means protecting under a tree's canopy's drip line, but really you want to consider the diameter breast height of the tree when evaluating the potential root zone protection. We often start with trying to protect 1 foot of radius around a tree for every inch in diameter of the tree and go from there. So a 12-inch diameter tree would get a 12-foot radius around it of tree protection. Now, thinking strategically, if you manage trees, you'll want to consider your local regulations and mimic how your jurisdiction manages those trees. This notion of an urban forestry program continuum was developed to think about tree management and what you should be doing to advance proper tree care and sustainable urban forestry. Where are you in your program? As you reflect on your lands and look at this slide, do you have clear funding allocations for tree care? Do you have the Tree Campus USA designation? I saw one of you folks had one up there. I was excited to see. Moving beyond, or perhaps rather you are farther along and have dedicated commitment from your staff. If you don't have a full-time arborist working for you, consider having a consultant on your speed dial for routine inspections. But moving beyond routine and reactionary thinking, you should be considering tree inventories to help guide funding and staffing decisions. Then, as you get even more strategic in your planning, you'll have more abilities to control your costs and your liabilities through a comprehensive management plan. This last concept at the far right is master plan. Really, that tends to come up as bigger thinking for cities and municipalities. So no fancy picture here, but another moment to pause. Any questions? I think we're doing, I may need to accelerate this a little bit. Mike, we're gonna hold questions for the end, I think is what we're gonna have to play here.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's look at a poll.
Yeah, right. A quick poll. Okay, everybody, quickly, attention. What regulations or policies have the most impact on how you manage trees? Yeah, local organization. Okay, interesting. Yeah, organization. I'm gonna end polling in the interest of time, but it looks like organizations, rules, and policies tend to be the biggest driver, which is great. I mean, that's the values of your organization really winning out, and it's nice not to have to lean on local government to force your organization's rules and policies. So I think that's pretty cool. So in the context of regulations, risk management, cost control, an essential strategy to conduct routine inspections, sorry, I'm moving too fast. Let's talk more about tree inspections. This is also known as a tree inventory or a tree survey. A tree survey is not really an acceptable term unless the work is being performed by a licensed survey company. So I don't much care for that one on the right, but I'll answer the phone anyway. Often survey companies can identify and document the existence of your trees, but rarely will they collect information that you'll need to use to manage your trees. So here's an image showing that, a little more detail of the results of a tree inventory project for a university campus we just completed outside of Portland, Oregon. Almost 2,000 trees were inspected and documented on the property with over 128 different species identified. Not all projects are as sophisticated as this, but they all begin with the same questions, which trees do you inventory and what information do you want to collect? So in developing your scope of work to conduct a tree inventory, the following are key considerations. Which trees do you collect? Should they be, woody shrubs on your property might be important, but perhaps they don't qualify as a tree. If your jurisdiction has codes on their books that define a significant tree, perhaps you need only collect those. For DRG, my work group, we frequently collect information about significant trees, and I use that, throw up some air quotes, as well as new plantings, smaller, we'll skip shrubbery and wooded areas that aren't significant. The next one you might ask is who's collecting the information? You can use students and volunteers, your staff, or maybe even outside consultants. But ideally, you want to engage an ISA certified arborist for this task, and even though it may not be critical when you get started. But I will say, whatever help you choose on this, you want to confirm their qualifications because you're going to be leaning on them to be your experts, your eyes in the field. And what information are your experts collecting? Well, I'm going to give some examples in the next slide. But what they collect helps you figure out the cost of doing this work. You may want to consider how much time will be required at each tree. And the more information you collect, the more time commitment you'll need from your collectors. And then also, give a little bit of thought to the outcomes of this kind of projects. Will you need a report, a GIS database, or a simple spreadsheet? A summary report is usually a good way to communicate the results, but it isn't necessarily required unless you're, maybe doing a permit application or informing your stakeholders. If you know how to review the information in spreadsheet tables, that can often be sufficient. Using tree management software may also be a good way to go. Besides getting data back, you should also be giving some thought and preparation for any urgent work that gets discovered. Typically, I've seen for about every 2,000 trees we look at, you might find just one tree that needs emergency attention for safety reasons, and then a handful that need high priority attention. Giving some thought to a risk management strategy will be helpful in deciding how you respond to the results. Here's a list of common attributes that is often collected and during a tree inventory. You want to ask yourself how you will use each of these attributes when the inventory is completed. I've laid them out here in 4 general categories to help guide you along, and a lot of this list was established as best management practices for tree inventories by the ISA in 2006, and I think that revised edition is from 2013. The basic attributes, species, diameter, condition, maintenance needs, and priority are pretty much your essential needs. With this information, you can understand the species diversity of your population to guide planting. With the relative age distribution, you can understand the urgency of tree care, and the condition will help you qualify your trees for attention. Looking at the maintenance needs and priority will also help you with preparing a budget for tree management. Some of the less common attributes, such as foliage, condition of wood, live crown ratio, tree height, crown spread, they're all worth, all those attributes are worth considering. And if you're modeling your inventory for environmental benefits in iTree, you'll want to take this data, you want to use this data to improve the accuracy of your model. You can also come up with a list of observations and concerns. That's can be unique to each client. So sometimes we identify lawnmower damage around the base of trees, or observing for conchs or fungus, or excessive lean, maybe identification of insects, pests. There's some specific observations maybe you want to glean from an exercise like this. Your inventory should also include some information about this site. Now, this might be the same for all trees on your grounds, but if this information can guide long-term care, long-term maintenance, such as building clearances, sidewalk heaving, or if there's irrigation present, you'll want to consider collecting that information as well. Risk assessment and appraisal attributes are also an option, but I'll submit a word of caution here that both of these need qualified staff to accurately collect the information. In the case of risk assessments, an arborist might spend upwards of 30 minutes with a tree documenting all the information to assess the risk, and that time frame component could be costly. And there's a time frame component to risk assessment too, for that matter. Is the tree, are we predicting the risk of failure within the next week or the next 3 years? The tree might survive the next week, but it may not survive the next 3 years. With appraisal, the method for appraisal is a function of the problem or context of the assignment. So, both risk assessment and appraisal are just complicated enough that you should need to explore the anticipated outcomes a little more before you take this on as part of a tree inventory project. Often in my work, we'll complete an inventory and then provide our clients with a short list of trees that would benefit from advanced risk analysis. Once you have your tree inventory data, I can't stress this enough, use the data. This kind of investment only yields value when the data gets integrated into your operations. Certainly, buying into a tree inventory software management system like this here is a good option. We have Davey, we have a software that can integrate integrate into all your tree care workflows, from inspection and documentation to work management and budgeting. But maybe you have a smaller tree population with much less engagement required. You can easily keep your data in a spreadsheet or a database. But the most important thing you can do is to keep these databases up to date as possible. When you get some tree work done, update your records about the tree. If you do that, you'll routinely update your records as part of your normal operations. You may never need to conduct a complete inventory again. Some other common ways to engage your data include iTree, which with its free tools, there's no work management system, but you can run benchmark reports. And then there ArcGIS and Google Earth are also some pretty good options for visualizing the location of your data. So I can pause for questions again, but I was kind of aiming so I think I'm going to continue to accelerate. How are we doing, Mike, on time and questions?
We've got no questions. I actually have one myself.
All right,
but we've
sure.
got about a little under 15 minutes left.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, so I think I've got about another 5 minutes of content, and then we'll have a good lengthy roundtable on what I've covered here. I've got one more polling question too, if we can give that a try. And this, as I presented this scenario, Mike, you able to pull that up?
There we go.
Okay. So how often do you inspect or inventory the trees you manage? Okay, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great. Yeah, actually, this is an interesting spread here as I get 14 of 17 in. We're almost there. 15. Yeah, okay. I guess you could close the poll there. We got 15 to 17 and it kind of slowed down. Yeah, so if you guys can see the results, there's really sort of two trends here. Whether it's, routinely as part of a schedule, that's proactive management. That's really the direction you want to be leaning in. When do you inspect trees? When I see a problem? Never. When asked to, those tend to be those reactionary approaches, and for that matter, that's how costs can get out of control for you. That's when you get surprises. So how do you avoid those surprises? Well, with all this information that you've collected, if you have information about your tree population, it's really your opportunity to develop a management plan. So a management plan is your roadmap providing detailed information, recommendations, and resources needed to effectively and proactively manage and grow your tree canopy. It can be strategic and long-term or operationally focused for the short term. But regardless of however in-depth you go, this is where you move from that reactive tree care costs that I've just been discussing to, to a planned approach with a managed budget, managed risk, and a sustainable tree population that will keep you on a path to controlling your tree care costs. If you start exploring options for tree management planning on the internet, hopefully you'll find yourself learning about ANSI standards, including ANSI A300 Part 7, Integrated Vegetation Management, and ANSI A300 Part 10, Integrated Pest Management. Both of these standards consider the higher concept of adaptive management. You evaluate your problem, assess the site, select a management strategy, monitor, and make decisions to act with your chosen treatment, and then start again and see how well that worked. This principle, I've simplified it here into this smaller circle here, but it's because it's well suited for management of a tree population. To be efficient and effective, you're going to want to take a close look at what you have, which is typically your tree inventory. What do you want, which is your vision of the future, and then you start mapping your goals and tactics to help you get there, and have planned moments where you assess how you're doing in your plan and make sure your information is current so you can start again. In traditional forestry, this might mean you were thinking 80 years ahead with your management plan, revising it every 25 years, and developing a detailed operational plan maybe every 5 years that updates. In urban forestry setting, most of our long-range planning is thinking 20 years ahead, with 5 to 7 year operational strategies that include in that every 5 years, 5 to 7 years, you're updating your 20-year long-range thinking. Let's look at this a little closer. It starts by looking at what you have. And at this point, I'm saying, it's more than just your tree inventory. Take a look at your existing staff, your equipment, and your stakeholders. Your equipment, might be kind of old. Maybe your equipment, then look outside of your organization and at your support network. Maybe there are grant-funded opportunities or nonprofit partnerships and volunteers who can help you. Figure out what you have and who your friends are. Next, imagine your vision for the future. Write down your mission for the plan, interview your staff and stakeholders and partners, engage with them. For cities, this can be an arduous process with lots of committees, community surveys, and workshops. At a smaller scale for grounds management, you may not need to consult with as many people, but when you're trying to figure out how you want your property to look 20 years from now, use the opportunity to develop champions, partners, and people who can support your vision. Now that you know where you want to be in the future, look at creating goals, objectives, strategies, tactics, and actions. All of those 5 words get used around interchangeably, and you kind of got to be careful with them. They're all directed towards achieving the same outcome. With all the creative approaches you can take, I suggest you evaluate your goals within 3 categories: goals to improve or optimize tree health, goals that will improve the efficiency in your operations, and stakeholder goals, the goals that build partners and consensus support for your plan. We often start with setting goals and objectives, but the discovery process will most certainly introduce strategies, tactics, and actions that seem like good goals, but may not be strong enough to survive this process. And by that I mean, think about defining your goals using a SMART acronym. So make sure they're specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. As an example, if you write down your goals, you know, and it looks like a simple one-time task, it might not be quite the right goal for a strategic plan. For instance, you may know that you want to get an ISA certified arborist on your staff, you know, but rather think instead, you know, to set a goal to care for trees on a routine cycle with ISA arborist supervision. You know, the former is a good operational action in the short term, which supports your ability to achieve the latter goal. So this, you know, action goal. The last part of the management plan is evaluating your plan performance. What indicators will show that you are being successful with your plan? Well, certainly success with your plan will be a deep understanding of costs and showing that you have control over them, and that you're controlling your costs without sacrificing these other benchmarks. I recommend looking for two categories of benchmarks, both quantitative and qualitative. Remember how I said that goals should be measurable? You know, if you can measure your goals, then you can they can easily be that how you measure them can become those benchmarks for you. So in conclusion, you know, as we come to the end of my presentation, let's take a look back and see how I did, you know, from that 5 whys approach and my title, did I deliver? You know, well, the topic was tree inspections and management strategies for cost control. So why do we do tree inspections? Well, because we want to take a planned tree inspections and strategic management allow you to proactively steward the care of your trees. And why do we steward our trees? Well, because trees take a long time to grow and they can be destroyed in hours. So why does that matter? Well, because trees are regulated by our communities and appreciated by our stakeholders. And why is that? Well, because trees provide environmental benefits and are well worth protecting. And with that, I'll leave the floor open to questions. You know, I've got a final polling if we've got time. But I put up here, this is my contact info. If you wanted to ask me follow-up questions later on, I referenced the website itreetools.org and ANSI A300 standards, you know, Green Cities Good Health can be a wealth of that information on how trees and the urban forest benefits humanity, and NatureScore. I think that one's you know, kind of an exciting new index to check out.
I've got a question for you, Ian.
Okay. How well do you use your management plan for grounds you manage? It guides our operations. Excellent. So I think maybe there's a lot of you hopefully this was there was some good new information in here, or reinforces that for you. If you have one and it's old, maybe I've given you some ideas to help update it. And if you don't have a management plan, you know, definitely consider starting to draft one. All right. Your results. Okay.
There you go. So Ian, I had a question for you.
Sure.
So let me get this thing off of here. So I saw on one of your slides under tree inventory, I think it was somewhere in Kent, and you showed an area. I don't know if it was a campus or municipality or what it was.
Yeah.
There were a chunk of trees that were sort of in a natural state versus ornamentals that were around buildings and that sort of thing. Wasn't that one, but
okay.
But anyway, that my thinking, it occurred to me, you know, I've been trying to get a tree inventory for years here at COCC, and the powers that be always balk at the price. And then it occurred to me after I looked at that map that maybe we could do a tree inventory with just focusing on the risk assessment areas where there are trees.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be a way to save money rather than doing, like, for instance, on our campus, it's about 200 acres and about half of it, let's say, is natural. And it's all either ponderosa or juniper. There are absolutely no other species. And you know, so there's no real risk to assess there. And in your experience, do you find companies, colleges that hire for tree inventories, do they cut out those natural areas and say, hey, don't worry about those, we'll we'll worry about them ourselves and saving themselves money in the
Yeah,
process.
I think this slide is a really good example of how that played out. You know, we working with the client, there was a limited budget. They knew they were planning to develop and add buildings and do changes to landscaping over on the west side of the campus. But they were responsible for managing all these trees through Hess Creek. So we worked together to come up with a budget that got them in the direction where this was the main focus area. But as they were able to pull funding together, we went further around, and primarily focused on areas where, parking lots where they've got trees that can damage cars, pedestrian areas. And then as you get into looking into your natural areas, I always recommend like looking at the outer edge of your natural areas where trees can fall out of that edge and potentially cause injury, or look at the pedestrian paths that people walk through and make that the focus of the inventory rather than deeper into the woods. But if you're managing those trees deep in the woods, you might look at some of the canopy analysis features to say, okay, if we know that there's 5,000 trees in that couple of acres of wood, you can model out those benefits and start having those conversations about environmental sustainability, participating in those environmental sustainability conversations at your campus.
Great, thank you. That helps. I think we better wrap it up now. So I got a couple closing things to talk about real briefly, but let's get right into the drawing. Christine, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right.
I am treasurer for Western Washington branch, and I have the pleasure of doing the drawings. And so I am going to randomly select two names here. Let's see, do I have two? I have two, okay. So, Michael Gilda, did I say that correctly? Is winner number one, and winner number two, Kayla Pierce.
Yay.
All right.
And I believe we're mailing those out. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, I think we'll have to work with Coates on that, but that may be an email, a gift certificate thing through the email.
Okay.
But we will be in contact with the winners. So a couple more closing statements here. First of all, thanks again for everybody for participating. Ian, great job. That was really interesting. I'm going to have to go back to the video later on the PGMS website and look at it in more detail. But I just posted into the chat box the link to our survey. So I encourage everybody to jump on there, take a survey. And then if you are going for your SGM credits, there's a spot in there to enter your name so that you get those credits.
I will say with the polling, I would love to get feedback on the title, because I kind of struggled with how to make that title work. And so if my presentation, my title didn't quite match what you were expecting, I would love that feedback, please.
Yep, that's great. So let's see, just stay in touch with PGMS. You can go to pgms.org. We've got a great program coming up this summer called the Coast to Coast Challenge. It's going to start in June, and I believe registration opens next week. I may be wrong on that, but it's coming up pretty quick. And you'll all get an email about that. But the Coast to Coast Challenge is going to be really cool. We're going to have webinars that are based at various locations throughout the United States, from the West Coast to East Coast, amazingly. So we're going to start first week of June sometime at the Portland Japanese Garden. And we'll be doing a tour there with the chief curator. And then we'll be wrapping up in Washington, D.C., I believe. So there'll be about one a week. And I think there's 5, 6 of them. But stay tuned. That's going to be a lot of fun. So hope you can all join us for that. And other than that, thanks again. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Coates Landscape Supply. Appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Okay.